So your party have had a TPK. Maybe they wasted all of their actions trying to jump onto the tables as cool as possible. Maybe they were insistent that the lava was actually an illusion, and if they jumped in, it would reveal a secret. Maybe your wizard threw a fireball while on an airship that was powered by gas. Yes, that was a thing I did once. Whatever the case might be, you need a strategy. The first thing you do before you even run into the situation of a TPK is figure out if the combat encounter or dungeon puzzle you're about to throw at your party could cause a TPK. Depending on your game, player death might be a very common occurrence. However, there are very few games that can survive past the total party kill. Maybe you'll be able to make a new game in the same world, but actually being able to just continue the story like nothing ever happened, well, that's pretty unlikely. Most likely, at best, you'll be starting a new game that takes place within the context of the previous party's failures, but you're still essentially going to be making a new game. I think it's generally best practice to have your most difficult encounters aim for one player death at most. In some games, it might be more expected for a lot more player death to happen, and some other games it might be expected for no player death to happen at all. This is something that's best talked about with your party before the game, just so that way everyone's coming in with the same expectations on how survivability is going to be. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm killing a player character every time I want to throw a difficult encounter that way. What I mean is more of they're going to have to roll multiple death saves, hopefully 3 or 4, which means that there's going to be some probability that they're going to die. Even if they failed one death save, that's still a 5% chance of that player dying on their next turn if someone can't help them get up, so it really makes my players have to strategize to prevent that situation from happening in the first place. Now, I'm not going to teach you how to balance encounters in this video because there's so many different variables you have to take into account there. What's your party's size? What's the skill level in your party? What are your party's abilities? Like, what are their classes? What are their races? What resistances do they have? What damage types are available to them? All of those things are going to take into effect when running an encounter. D&D has difficulty calculations that you can use to kind of check, and I find that a deadly encounter or just above deadly is usually just around where I'm looking for, where I can take 1 or 2 party members down. Someone has to roll a couple death saves, but it's not going to totally wipe my party. Now, this isn't always accurate either. I mean, I've had an encounter which was way above deadly where my entire party survived because my paladin 2-shot the guy with a crit. And then I've had another encounter that was slightly above hard, and I had 2 PCs fail 2 death saves, and they both had to do that 50-50 death save to see if they'd live. Now, the easy way to do this is to simply throw harder and harder encounters at your party until you have that moment where someone's really close to dying, or even you have a player character death, and then you know that's about the max challenge that you can throw at them for now. Now, combat isn't the only way you're going to have a TPK. A very common way TPKs can happen is through dungeon traps. Now, the issue with dungeon traps is you don't want to weaken them so that way your party survive, because if you do that enough, the traps become more of an inconvenience, and the party will just stroll through your dungeon not really caring about the minor damage that they're going to take. But you also don't want to make them so difficult that you end up in a situation in the Tomb of Horrors where if the party walk into a room and just wait, they die without any roll whatsoever. I mean, maybe you want that, but I don't. So let's try something else. The issue that you'd probably find here that would cause a TPK is the party aren't going in with the right expectations for how difficult this dungeon or encounter are going to be, and therefore aren't going through it with the proper care that it deserves. For anything that you prep that could possibly bring a PC death, they should probably know that possibility exists ahead of time. What I do when I know my party is going to go up against a really difficult encounter, I just tell them, hey, I've prepared something in this game that has a very high probability of killing you. Keep that in mind as you go through the session. Some people might think that I'm ruining immersion by doing this, but all of my players have been dungeon masters before or are still dungeon masters, so we're all very comfortable with playing with meta knowledge and not letting that ruin the experience. But I can see this causing some issues in a different group, so instead you'll want to tell the party organically. One of the easier and more fun ways to do this is if you know the party have had a really difficult time with a certain type of monster, at the head of this new monster's lair, put 1 or 2 of those guys absolutely eviscerated on the ground. If that creature was indeed as traumatizing as you thought it was, your players will immediately understand the power level of the creature they're about to face without you having to worry about meta knowledge. So let's say you've warned the party and they take it in stride, heading straight into the monster's lair without a care in the world. What do you do then? Well, at this point, it might be fair to let actions meet consequences. However, I like to give my party the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they misunderstood me when I said, oh, this is a really difficult fight, you're gonna die, be careful. So I like to give them at least one more opportunity to back out. If it makes sense for your situation, it's probably a good idea to give the party some way of escape. The easiest way to do that is to simply not close off the entrance they came in through. If you trap your party in the encounter and they all die, that can be very frustrating as they were kind of left with no options once that entrance was closed off. Now, if they trap themselves in there, that's not your fault, let it happen. But if they thought they were going in with a way to back out, leave that back out option open. Now, running away should have its consequences. Whatever the party were going into this place for, obviously they're going to fail to get it. The enemy is now very much aware of the party's presence and are going to continue to chase them down. Any party members left unconscious in this room are definitely just going to be killed off, but escape should be an option the party are aware of. But you leave that entrance open, you even tell the party, hey, just letting you know you can escape if you want, and they say no, they're going to let the dice roll, they're going to fight it out, and that inevitably ends in a TPK. What do you do from here? Is your game over? Are you suspended from DMing privileges for being a bad boy? Well, let's figure it out. Ask them where they want to go from here. Maybe they want to play as a new party, traveling in the footsteps of the old one, trying to solve the mission the other one failed to do. Maybe they want to do something else. Maybe they want to continue to play in the same world, however has to live in the consequences of their failure. Or maybe they want a totally fresh start. Maybe they want to play a new game in a new campaign and not think about the failure of this world they failed to save. Or maybe your party don't want to quit playing as their characters and want a little DM intervention. But how do you handle that? You killed all the PCs, there's no one to cast Revivify on them, how would that even work? Well, it could work, and without knowing your game and situation, there are a few options that are available to you so you can keep your players continuing to play as their characters. The first is the save point method. The party all wake up back at camp, sharing a collective dream of sorts, where they all went to face the big bad evil guy, and all died. Was this a premonition? An alternate reality that they got to see, perhaps? Who knows? All they know is they get another chance to take this guy on. I'm not the biggest fan of this idea myself. I think that if something happens in a game, you should just let it play out. However, I've heard enough stories where they did this and went back to before the session happened in the next one, where you should consider it as an option. The second choice is divine intervention. The party all feel their souls heading on to the afterlife, when suddenly they feel themselves getting pulled back by something. They all suddenly wake up back in their bodies in the middle of the battlefield. The bad guys escaped, but they're alive. How? Who knows? Maybe they'll find out later. Maybe this was someone hiding away who cast Revivify on them, or maybe this was a god or another powerful entity that decided they needed a second chance at taking on the bad guy. The issue with both of these choices is that once they happen, it's really going to feel like death doesn't really have a consequence anymore. The same with the last one as well, actually. Once you give your players a get out of jail free card, they're going to expect it any other time it happens. And if you're throwing encounters and traps at your party that can TPK them, you should be dealing with death as something that's a really high consequence. So what's the third option? Well, this is going to be very setting dependent and whether you want to do all this work dependent, but I came up with it when I was writing ideas for this video and I got really excited about it. I think it's a lot of fun, so just hear me out. Here's a little fun idea. So the party die and their souls get transferred to the afterlife, but there seems to be some sort of mix-up as all of their souls get sent down to Avernus. With demons all around the party, and with their weapons in hand, they know there's only one way they're getting out of this. Well, actually, two ways. RIP, and tear. I feel like this would be such a cool concept to keep in your back pocket if you ever had a TPK happen. Like, you could make this a couple of sessions, you could make this a whole adventure arc, you could make this a whole campaign, you could have the party intentionally get TPK'd in session 1, and then just have a whole campaign of them trying to get out of hell. The party get to continue playing as their characters, they get to feel the consequences of dying, and if they died in a particularly important fight, well, now there's extra pressure to get back to the material plane so they can stop the bad guy from doing whatever their evil plan is going to be. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and you want to see more like it, click that subscribe button, stay updated on future releases. Thank you again, and this is the end of the video.